Okay, so now that you know a little bit about looking at Java code, you're going to want to actually start writing your own Java code. And as soon as you start writing your own code, you're going to run into problems and you're going to want to know how to figure out why your code isn't working. It's important to have a set of skills and tools to help you debug your code. So I have fashioned this simple little example to hone in on a couple of techniques that will help you investigate your code so you can figure out what might be going wrong. We don't have a lot of Java knowledge right now. So the only things that we're going to focus on are the things you actually know to look for because you know how those work. And in future debugging videos, we'll look at more complicated bugs using more interesting bits of Java, and we'll kind of build up your debugging knowledge as we go. So here we've got a little system called Hair Salon. And just let's walk up to the system like the way we did with the drawing player and try and figure out what's going on. So we open it up, we find our source directory, and we see that it has two packages, the model and the UI, which is great because we kind of recognize those. The model has two little classes, customer and hair salon, and the UI has main. So I'm just going to open up main and do the thing we always do, which is run it. And here we see that we have some kind of output. This is just printing stuff down the side of the screen or down the bottom, depending on how your IntelliJ is set up. So in future, you're not going to examine the output of your programs in this way. Often what we do is we run programs from tests, but often you also kind of watch the output of your program. So we're going to do a little bit of a mix. Right now, we're just looking at output because we still haven't looked at testing in Java. And actually, this isn't that uncommon to do. So here's what we get when we run it. We have a new customer booked in at 12, and it looks like there's some kind of verification step. And so we can kind of start to relate where these things are going on over here in the code. So I made a customer called Elisa, to just name it after myself for fun. And we make a new booking, then we verify the booking, then we print the booking list, and over here we can see all the times of the day. And then we do it again for someone called Reed, who you'll meet in a later course. So that's everything that happens when the code runs. It's a pretty simple little program. And now I'm going to run away and inject a couple of bugs, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to try and find them. And we're back. So now we're going to rerun the code and see what it does now. So it says making a new customer called Elisa, which sounds good. And then it says the customer null is booked in at 12. Well, that doesn't sound right because before it said Elisa. So now what we do is we follow a really principled way of debugging code. We're going to use a hypothesis-driven approach as opposed to kind of a haphazard way of investigating what's going on. We're going to form a really educated guess about what might be going wrong in our code. And then we work out ways that we could invalidate or validate that guess. Then we carry out those steps to invalidate or validate, and we rule out hypotheses as we go and finally find the bug. So let's deal with this problem before even looking at whether the rest of this code is working, because you can really only fix one bug at once. So one hypothesis is that it's not printing out the name correctly. So to investigate that hypothesis, we would have to look directly at the code that's printing out the name. And this is actually kind of a good place to start because it's always a good option to look right at where you think the error is occurring and see if that code is somehow wrong. But let's keep going with building up hypotheses because we want to kind of collect as many theories as we can. So another hypothesis is that the name isn't stored correctly. And in that case, to prove that hypothesis, we would want to look at where the name gets stored. So we now have two hypotheses to prove or disprove. So the printing out is probably just coming from inside make new booking. So to find out what might be going wrong, we want to run our code, but we just don't want to run all the code because that's just going to run the whole same thing again. But we also don't want to read all the code because there's too much code. This is even a small system and there is still too much code. So we want to run it, but we want to watch what's happening while we're running it. So we're going to use this wonderful thing called a debugger. The debugger lets us set what's called a breakpoint. A breakpoint does what you probably think it might, which is stop execution just before executing the line at which it's placed. So then we can press this bug icon that says debug main. So instead of run main, we have debug main. And if we click this, it will run the code and it will stop at the breakpoints. So the code has stopped running, and now we can see these two structures that we have. We have the Elisa object, and the name is null. And we have Label Salon, which has a booking list, and all the elements are null. So that means that by the time we got to this line of code, the name was still equal to null. So we have two technical options here. We can step over a method, or we can step into the method watching its execution. So to look inside to see what's happening inside this method, we want to step in. So we stepped in to see what's going on, and all it's actually doing is printing out customer C.getName has been booked at this booking time. And if we look at customer C, we can see that the name is null. So it's not that this print statement is wrong. It's actually that the name is still null. So we have to discard our first hypothesis. The bug must be happening somewhere else. So we can stop our execution entirely, go back to main, and change where our breakpoint is to set it to the line above and see if anything there is the problem. So we hit our bug icon again, and we see that we have La Belle Salon, and it has some bookings, and all the elements are null, which makes sense because we haven't actually called make new booking yet. But we want to figure out what's going on inside of here to see why this name isn't being stored. So we step in. And here we see the constructor for customer takes a name and prints out making a new customer called name, which seems good. But if we keep going and step through here, the parameter comes in properly, the name's Elisa, and if we keep going, we see in this, that's this customer object, that the name is still null at the end of this method. And that means that we never actually set the value of this field. And this is a really common mistake. If something seems like it has the wrong value, or especially if it has somehow kept its initial value, and in this case that value is null, then you're probably just forgetting to actually ever set it. We should have known this right from the start actually, because the field name is gray, which means its value is never set. This is IntelliJ's little hint. So all we need to do is add a line of code right here that does the actual work. We can just say this.name equals name. We'll get more into why you need the keyword this in the data flow video. So now we can hit stop and rerun our debugger. It brings us to the same spot, and if we step into our method, we can see the printout happen. So we can see the current object, and the object now has the name Elisa. And IntelliJ is even really great and tells us that all the way up in the fields. So we can resume our program, and it'll show us down here, making a new customer called Elisa. Customer Elisa has been booked at 12. Yay! And if we run it the normal way now, instead of using the debugger, we get the same thing up here. So we fixed one bug. We forgot to set a field. Silly us, we can look for that one while we're coding. Now we're going to encounter the second type of bug that you might accidentally inject into your code. Here we see there is no customer booked at this time. What? We literally just made a customer booked at that time. So what is going on? You can hear the frustration in my voice, and you will feel it too when you're debugging. So we just go back to main and we make our two hypotheses about what is going wrong. The first possibility is that verify booking is reporting it incorrectly, that there is a booking, but verify booking isn't telling us that. So to validate that hypothesis, we would set a breakpoint inside of verify booking and watch to see if the verification step was working properly. The second hypothesis is that the booking isn't actually being made. And for that, we would have to set a breakpoint inside of make new booking and watch the booking being made to validate that it is being done properly. Okay, so let's look at the first hypothesis first. So here we are in verify booking. Let's put a breakpoint right where it says that there's no customer booked at that time. Even though we don't really know what's going on around it, there are these sort of ifs and things we have no idea about yet, that's okay. We can still put a breakpoint at this line of code because we know that that's the one that's running. And we can take a look at what's going on in terms of variables and fields, just to see that everything is kind of coming in correctly. So let's just debug from here. So we've run all our code up to here, and if we look at our console, we can see that we've gotten through the customer Elisa has been booked at 12, and we're about to print out there is no customer booked at that time. So what's going on? What are the local variables in the fields? So we're in the class hair salon, and we can see that the bookings are all null, so there are no bookings. C is our customer, and if we open this up, we can see that the name is Elisa, which seems fine, but it seems like there must have been a problem at this line. Booking.get came back with null. And sure enough, if we look up there, IntelliJ has remembered for us what the variables were at that point, and we can see that the booked customer was null. We got the booked customer out of the list, bookings, at the booking time. And we're seeing that even though we expect it to be taken by Elisa, it's actually null. So verify booking is behaving correctly. No one is booked at this booking time. So let's examine our second hypothesis. So let's stop and go back into main and put our breakpoint earlier and rerun the debugger. Great, now we're in main, we have LaBelle Salon, and all the bookings are null. And we have our Elisa customer. This all looks like it was created correctly. So now we want to step into our make new booking method, and we remember this from before. It's printing out that it's made the new booking. And then the method ends. There are still no bookings, even though the effects clause, which kind of tells us the purpose of the method, says it books the customer into the requested time slot. So something should be going into a list and it's not going into the list. This is actually a super common typo. So to fix this, all we need to do is write a line of code that says booking.set at the booking time customer C. So now we can stop and we can run again, and we can step over to see if LaBelle Salon actually got anything booked in it. And look at that, inside our bookings at index number 12, we have our customer. And then if we stopped this and ran the whole thing again, we would see that the behavior is exactly what we want it to be. So we've spotted these two bugs, forgetting to set a field and forgetting to modify the contents of an array correctly.